I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning Commission of April 9th, 2012. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, well, we should face the east. Which way? Yeah, the east. Technically, you're supposed to face the east if there isn't a flag. We'll go in the normal direction. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Ferris?
Here.
Commissioner Tupel?
Here.
Chair Reynolds?
Here. Now is the time for public comments. I have one card. If you'd like to speak on something that is not on the agenda, now is the time to submit a card. And the card is from Mr. Nick Kidway. If you come forward and state your name and city of residence, and you have 5 minutes. Good evening, Mr. Kidway.
Good evening, Chair Reynolds. My name is Nick Kidway. Kidway.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't mind getting it ruined, but it's just that other people just end up screwing it up also, and it's a family name, and we are proud of it. Just like I'm proud of the American flag, and there's a reason that the flag is not here. I mean, this whole city is just so incompetent, it makes me sick. I mean, thank God, I mean, the Constitution is still here. I mean, that's what keeps you on the toes. There's no supplemental packet or anything like that. I had submitted information about your inaccurate minutes, and I hope I will be allowed to speak on your minutes. Your rules do not stop any citizen from not speaking on it, and normally it's a mundane affair, but not in this city. The last meeting was really terrible from concerned citizens' point of view, of which I am the director. If the TOTV can show the overhead, that's the enforceable agreements of the former redevelopment agency for the city of Thousand Oaks. And I mean, like I showed you the Constitution, I mean, we follow rules and regulations in this country. And one of the reasons this agency, of which the Planning Commission used to wear the second hat, has been defunded and removed is because of the corruption and the crookedness and lack of citizen input and special interests eating at the trough that this was removed. And this city has been the worst example in the state, among the worst. For its size, it's the worst. And in this area, it's a leader because of our bad behavior. Camarillo and Moore Park and other cities also formed their redevelopment agencies to follow us because we started in 1979, the big part of it. And the sad thing was that there was a 3-0 vote at the last meeting for a zone change or something like that for the parcel on the left-hand side, which were taken by the city, and that's why I showed you the enforceable agreements, is that anything under AB, because of AB X27, anything that was bought or activity on the redevelopment agency is not allowed since August 2010. And this city just completely ignores it, completely ignores people like me. But I've talked to Mr. Bill Rice, over at the State Department of Finance in Sacramento, and they're not going to let you folks go away. Hopefully, they will pursue the case. It's very sad that important issues like these are put under the table when I would think that this is 1812 or 1912 or what, that the important issues are not discussed, and we have a right to vote initiative in the city. I mean, and that's why, I mean, it's such an irony that, I mean, it's from God that you don't have the flag here, because, I mean, we have 2 city council members already, almost, who are appointed, and the history will repeat itself again it's possible. So we might have 3 council members that are appointed. So, I mean, what a wonderful country this is, and what a beacon of progress and democracy for the rest of the world it is. But you would not learn it or see it from the activities of this body. And the issues are like Courtesy Chevrolet, that lot being empty, now having Vespa scooters and a small part of it. Your job is to rezone it. I mean, you need to take the leadership. On Hampshire Road, the empty former Kmart. Nobody's doing anything about it. Twice in my neighborhood, I would like to buy cheap gas at Costco, and the Lowe's and Price Club, they have all refused to come into the city. And then nobody addresses the issue. I mean, people, I've said it many times, so people on the street stop me and say about the cannibalization that's going on in the city. Is that even in the Low project, there's 40,000 square feet of new small retail, and existing retailers and restaurants are struggling to make ends meet and going out of business every day. Thank you for letting me speak. Have a wonderful evening.
Mr. Kidway, would you tell me again how to pronounce your name?
It's like Billy the Kid and the alphabet Y. Say them together. Billy the Kid, Kid Y. Very simple.
Y.
Kid Y. It's not like the way it is
Isn't
spelled,
that what I
unfortunately.
said?
Thank you for
I
asking.
said Kidway, right?
Your way
I said
is the wrong.
Kid-Y.
Yeah, it's
okay, I know
W-H-Y.
you are now calling me by my correct name.
Yeah,
so
I know your name, Darrell.
No. Yes, Mr. Kidwai, would you come forward because Commissioner Ferris would like to ask you
I
a
actually
question.
wanted to make sure of one thing. He did put a comment card in for the minutes. I wanted to make sure, are we going to allow him to speak to the minutes? Or if not, I'd want to make sure
Yeah.
that his input regarding the minutes is provided to us.
Yes, I do have his card.
Then I'll ask during
Yeah,
that.
there's nothing in the rules to stop that.
That's fine. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Written comments, announcements, continuances, Mr. Town?
I had nothing at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Would the clerk please call case 6A?
Hearing advertised as required by law is hereby open to consider agenda item 6A regarding case SPA 2012-70074, applicant Richard Winchester, request to amend the land use table, Appendix A, of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan to permit drive-through facilities for eating and drinking establishments along the boulevard frontage subject to certain development standards. Location, along Thousand Oaks Boulevard between Moore Park Road and Duesenberg Drive, specific plan 20.
Thank you. And good evening, Mr. Alawani.
Good
Would you
evening.
like to give the staff report?
Yes, good evening,
Thank you.
ma'am, members of the commission. I'd like to direct your attention to your monitors for staff's presentation. Again, as mentioned, the applicant tonight for this specific plan amendment is Mr. Winchester, and it is a request to amend the land use table within Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan that deals with drive-through facilities and for drinking and eating establishment along the frontage of Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Here's a map of Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan. As mentioned, it's between Moore Park and Duesenberg. Background of the specific plan was adopted, as you all know, by the City Council last year, and the plan established design and development standards for properties within the boulevard, and also established a regulated and permitted uses table. And those uses and regulated uses and permitted uses are based on geographic locations along the boulevard. One is the boulevard frontage, the second area is adjacent to residential, and the third area is other areas within the plan itself. As shown in attachment number 1 in the staff report, drive-through facilities for eating and drinking establishment is not permitted along the boulevard frontage, which is one of the categories in the specific plan. However, fast food restaurants are permitted, except the drive-through, but they need to provide the parking requirements as required for any development project. An example of that is Arby's, which is across the street from the proposed project. So it's a fast food restaurant are permitted uses along the boulevard frontage. It's just that the drive-through facilities at this time. The concerns with typical drive-through facilities is several reasons. Is because the specific law requires the location of the building and the back of sidewalk, that will be precluded for a typical fast food building with a drive-through facility, and I'll show you examples of that. And they have limited or no outdoor seating area because of the location. Some of them have outdoor seating area, some of them don't, but it's limited. And at the same time, because of the typical design, you'll be seeing the stacking lane from the boulevard because, again, the design and the layout. So these concerns and combination will be conflicting with the goal of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan. Here's an example. This is McDonald along Toyo Boulevard that just recently added a dual lane. As you can see, the drive-through wraps around the building on 3 sides. If this new project and the front of the building facing Thousand Oaks Boulevard will be right there on the sidewalk, and it would be a little bit difficult to provide the drive-through facilities around the building as shown here. So that's an example of current standards. There is another one on Moore Park Road. Again, this is Jansen Moore Park, another McDonald's. Again, as you see, the drive-through facility takes 3 sides of the elevation for it to operate. This one is Jack in the Box on Moore Park Road. Again, it's two sides of the building with the drive-through. If the building closer to the boulevard, it will be difficult to provide that. Somehow they have to redesign and come up with a new layout for that. And the last one is In-N-Out Burger, Newberry Road. Again, the frontage on Newberry Road is the main part of the drive-through access. In evaluating the specific plan amendment, and as requested by the applicant, is to accommodate a proposed Starbucks at the corner of Rancho Road and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Staff been working with the applicant since last year, the end of last year, with regard to the proposed use, and with this amendment, the request is to allow drive-through facilities for eating and drinking establishment along the frontage with certain development standards that will ensure that the feasibility of the stacking and the operation of the facility itself will not be facing Thousand Oaks Boulevard, or will not be minimize the feasibility along the boulevard. Those standards that's been proposed in a specific amendment is that the drive-through facility itself and the windows, it must be behind the building, and the building will be near or back of the sidewalk in compliance with the specific plan. The other standard is the creation of public outdoor gathering place in the front between the building and the sidewalk, which is under the specific plan. If it's a retail operation, will be the width of the sidewalk and either the building right there at the back of the sidewalk or 15 feet back. So this one here will require the outdoor gathering to be provided rather than given the option of the building at 0 or 15 feet. So this will be a requirement. And then, of course, the important thing is that access to the drive-through on the site would not be in conflict with the pedestrian activities that the plan is encouraging. This site plan before you is conceptual plan. This is not the final plan. This is part of the application that was submitted, and we're still working with the applicant with regard to the traffic, on-site circulation traffic, and we do that with any other project in the city. We evaluate the on-site circulation, drive-through or not, make sure that it will not be in conflict with access on the street from the public right-of-way. So this is just a layout showing you where the building is going to be located and where the drive-through access is, which is behind the building. The final design of this will be we're still working with the applicant and finaling that to make sure that there's enough queuing or stacking in the driveway, and it will not impact Rancho Road or Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and we'll make sure there's no conflict between the two. So this is just conceptual plan and not the final design with regard to the layout. So the proposed change to the land use table would be to allow drive-through facilities with administrative special use permit, subject to those conditions or standards that I just mentioned. And the process of administrative SUP is notification to the property owners. If there's any objection or opposition, then we'll go through administrative hearing process. And if somebody appeals, it will become before you, the Planning Commission, for consideration. In conclusion, with regard to the new standards, again, the intent is to maintain the key goal of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan, which is to maintain a pedestrian-friendly environment along the frontage. And that will, this amendment will do that because the building will be back at the sidewalk, which is a requirement. And then the stacking and parking behind the building will be not feasible. And then the creation of the gathering area, the public space in the front facing the boulevard. So, again, this amendment is exempt from CEQA because as not having a significant environmental impact. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the amendment. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions, the staff? Commissioner Ferris?
Thank you. Mr. Alawami, if you could you explain to me a little bit again about what the building at back of sidewalk, what that entails again? I think I know, but
Under the specific plan for the area outside the Civic Arts Plaza zone, it requires the existing 10-foot sidewalk and then 5-foot additional, so that's 15 feet sidewalk width. And then the building, there's a setback, building setback. It could be either 0, which could be right behind the end of the sidewalk, or 15 feet in. So there's a range between 0 and 15 feet for the building to be behind the curb, behind them in the sidewalk.
and so you're saying that they would be 15 feet from the sidewalk? Is that what building at back of sidewalk means?
For project within the specific plan?
No, I'm
For this project?
no, not the project. I'm talking about
In
the
general.
standards
In general, correct.
Yeah.
It will be between 0 and 15 feet
from the sidewalk.
from the back of sidewalk, which is the 15 feet.
Okay, so that's not a change in the.
No, there's no change to the specific plan.
Okay, that's what I was confused with. I thought we were bringing forward that that's a change.
No.
But in fact, that's exactly what the specific plan says,
Correct.
right? Okay. On the land use table, I'm looking at, there basically are 4 different levels of scrutiny, I guess, with respect to whether something's allowed or not. NP means it's not permitted at all.
Correct.
So regardless of what the city council or the planning commission or staff wants to do, that's just not allowed. Then they can get a special use permit, but it comes to the planning commission. That's kind of a higher level of scrutiny, but it has to come before the commission in order to do that. Then below that is a special use permit that could be done administratively, right? And then there's others that are just permitted. If they meet the standards, then they would be granted their permit because that's allowed by the specific plan.
Yeah,
Is that a fair assessment?
Correct. The permit will be an existing building, so the use will be permitted in that building. So yes, it's just a TI.
Right. It seems to me, I guess the question I have, I don't necessarily have any problems with the allowance of drive-through facilities on the boulevard. I guess the question is what the level of scrutiny is in order to meet the public policy goals of what the specific plan was trying to do. In the full evaluation of this, what was proposed, what was brought forward to the city, what was reviewed through public hearings, it was specifically called out that drive-through facilities would not be allowed if they had frontage on Thousand Oaks Boulevard or adjacent to residential. And now, I guess the change would be that we would skip over the Planning Commission scrutiny and only go to administrative approval if there's no concerns. That would seem to me to be kind of a big leap. I'd like to make sure if we had thought out in the beginning, we're not really sure whether we want drive-through facilities at all, that if we are going to allow them, that we make sure that the public policy intents of what the design guidelines are actually brought forward to the commission for its approval to see if it's actually working. Mm-hmm. Was there any consideration in that?
Well, the consideration with staff when we evaluated this, if the project complies with standards, there's no waivers, no deviations, then it's administrative approval. That's what we believe in. It's an expedited processing of the permit in one way or another, and rather than waiting 45 days, go to the Planning Commission, administrative, if it fits and complies with the specific plan. And we believe with the new standards, if they comply with those new standards we're establishing, it should be treated like any other project because they meet the standards in the specific plan. If they're asking for a waiver or deviation, yes, that needs to come before the Planning Commission.
Well, let me ask this. If they meet the standards, why not just make it a permitted use?
Well, because it's new construction.
So,
You need an application for new construction.
right, but we went from a process after a full public review of the public policy benefits of what the specific plan was going to do, and we said that should not be permitted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obvious that they thought through this because there's a specific line item that says drive-through facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my concern is I don't mind allowing it as a potential use, but it might not be a bad idea from a public policy standpoint to have the Planning Commission review those. If at a later point in time it turns out that it's better, we can drop the level of scrutiny down to administrative. But I think I'd like to have some discussion about that, maybe with the public and the commissioners on that. So,
Are there other questions of staff? Commissioner Chaparral?
Yes, following up on Commissioner Ferris's concerns on that, and I actually had those same feelings, but correct me if I'm wrong, the reason we, on the land use table with the specific plan, the reason that we went for the not permitted aspect is based on the traditional design of a fast food restaurant, with the building being located pretty much in the middle of the site, and then the traffic being visible from the boulevard. Is that correct?
Correct.
And with what we're looking at here is different mitigated circumstances that allow us to basically shield that from visibility on the boulevard. And that, from what I get, that's what the understanding of, or what staff was trying to achieve. Is that right?
Yes, and we still meet that goal of the specific plan by having frontage and all the other requirements.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because that was a good point.
And so staff would prefer if we completely change the Pacific plan, allowing drive-throughs with it at the rear, rather than, or with that change, but not have those individual restaurants come before us? Or would they still all come before us because of this drive-through?
Well, the new standards will be administrative processing of the application, unless there's a waiver or deviation from those standards or any other standards in the specific plan. That will trigger the application to be a public hearing Planning Commission case.
Is it possible to not change the Pacific plan and still have drive-throughs with the drive-through at the back of the building? The Pacific plan completely prohibits them. So
Not along the frontage of the boulevard. It's permitted in
Right.
other areas, but not along the frontage.
So we really need this change in Pacific plan in order to allow any of them on the boulevard then?
Correct. And in other areas, as you can see in the table,
Right.
is special use permit administrative and not PC.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before I go? Mr. Town?
Just to quickly follow up on Mr. Alawami's comments, as we went through the specific plan process for the boulevard, one of the original tenets of the vision that was originally adopted by TOBA and endorsed by the council back in 2006 was to, I wouldn't call it expedited processing, but it was to allow more permits to go through with staff level review than Planning Commission. So while it's completely, and don't get me wrong, it's completely within your purview tonight to recommend that this type of an application would in fact be considered by the Planning Commission, I just glanced through the land use table in the specific plan, and there's only a few uses that currently require SUP at the Planning Commission level, and those would be alcohol beverage service next to residential, emergency shelters, and mixed-use vertical projects. So the majority, probably 90% or more, are administrative level SUPs. So just so you understand, the landscape that's in the specific plan is still totally within your purview, But that was one of the original ideas of the specific plan, was to make it a little bit easier to process these applications as they came to the city within the boundaries of the specific plan.
But only one letter is necessary for it then to go to administrative approval.
Yeah, just to be really clear, and we had it in the PowerPoint, but when we say administrative processing, that's not over-the-counter processing. In other words, for an SUP like this, we would provide a sign, we would provide 500-foot notification to adjacent property owners. If even one person opposed the special use permit application, it automatically triggers an administrative hearing. And that's a public hearing. Both sides are able to present their opinions and positions. And then that decision is appealable to you as the Planning Commission. So there still is that administrative hearing step that is automatically triggered and at no cost to opponents.
Thank you, Mr. Town. Commissioner Truppel?
Yeah, just one more question, if you could clarify that a little bit more. An administrative hearing, how does that actually take place?
Well, it just takes place on an as-needed basis, and it's handled by a senior staff member. It actually physically occurs up in the boardroom on the third floor here at City Hall, and typically takes place on Thursday afternoons. And it's a little bit more informal than this environment, but each side is there, the applicant and the sort of appellant, so to speak, and each presents their positions, their concerns. Staff provides background and an overview, and then we really try to work out any potential differences in a collegial fashion. The administrative hearing officer has the ability to impose or modify conditions for the project, so that person often does that. They can approve the project, or they can deny the project, and it's gone both ways. And then whichever party would like to, or feel so inclined, can then appeal that decision to this body.
Yeah, the only reason I wanted you to do that, because I don't think people realize how wonderful our city process is, that we can take that time individually with people to solve problems before they hit this level or the council level.
Okay, thank you. And we'll open the public hearing, and I have a speaker's card from Mr. Neil Scribner. If you'd like to come forward, state your name and city of residence, and you have 15 minutes. Good evening, Mr. Scribner.
Thank you. I'm Neil Scribner, architect for the applicant, 4765 Via Don Luis, Thousand Oaks, 91320. Mr. Dick Winchester, the applicant, cannot be here tonight. He's been recently in the hospital with pneumonia, and he's probably just not up to it. The applicant has owned this property since 1979, and it was recently a gas station, and it has been cleaned up, and that's all been documented, and the staff has copies of that happening. So I'm very happy tonight. I've been on the Boulevard Committee that helped develop the specific plan for 5 years. So it's really an honor to be here tonight. I think it's one of the first projects we have. Anyway, I won't go into all the details, but what we've done in our design, the building, by the way, is only 850 square feet and very small, kind of at an angle to the corner. I think its closest point is about 13 feet, and then it goes away from the street as you go towards Rancho Road. The building is covered with about 75% stone. It has a pitched roof on it, metal roof, and it has a large patio between the building, around the building, up near the street. There's stone, colored concrete, and there's a lot of stone in that patio. The patio includes a fire pit table. There's a large steel trellis that kind of wraps around the corner, follows the curve of the corner. We have a low stone wall facing the corner, which gives you a little bit of semi-privacy to the patrons that would be using the area, the patio and the trellis area. And there will actually be some outlets there, so to people, if they want to use their electronic devices, they can do it there at that point. So we think that's in the spirit of the specific plan, because the point was to make the boulevard pedestrian friendly. So we think when you arrive at that corner, it'll be a very active pedestrian area and very friendly, and should be a nice setting for the city. So Unless you have specific questions, that's really about all I have to say.
Are there questions of the speaker? None? Thank you, Mr.
That's it.
Scribner, and you'll have a chance for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you.
And the next card is Mr. Nick Kidwai. He left the hearing room. Oh. If you come forward, state your name and city of residence, and you have 5 minutes. Good evening, Mr. Kidwai.
Good evening, Chair Darrell Reynolds. I apologize. I was trying to sneak another preview on the report. Do want to thank the wonderful architect whose imprint is all over the city. I have no problem with him. In fact, appreciate all the great designs he comes up with. However, there's just one big drawback with this, and I hope, which is a trump card, which should really shut down this and send it back, because we are going backwards as far as I can see. I hope TOTV can show us the Downey McDonald's. That's the historic McDonald's in Downey. There's on 405, there's a donut place from the 50s also, which has not been torn apart. That's the way fast food used to be. And the two really disturbing things that I find about this project is, one, that you have to dig deep to find out that it's a Starbucks. I mean, it says, you know, SPA 2012-775, and you have to really dig deep to find out that it's a Starbucks that was in the news. And then B, it's a drive-in only, right? It's a drive-in only? Yeah, and walk up. So, I mean, that's the key. I mean, and that is absolutely disgusting. And I'm glad that the city attorney is over here, because about 15 years ago we had a spill, and the other city attorney used the act of God defense. And I was in Santa Monica today in the afternoon, and I couldn't believe it. I ended up going to a McDonald's, which is just the same replica on Wilshire Boulevard of what they are proposing. And what that means is, I mean, despite all the talk and all that, and this is, you know, the boulevard plan, I thought this was on it, but I looked at the drawings, some of them that you have are from Mr. Scribner, so I was wrong in that. But what that means is, one of the most important human things, and one of the things that made me love this country in 1971, is restrooms. I mean, forget the restrooms, there's nothing there, except maybe I use the internet. You do have the internet, so you are in 2012. These are the napkins that the guy gave me. Even though he was Asian, but his English was very weak. So I asked for nuts for the sundae that I bought, and he gave me more napkins. And I said, okay, and walked away. So all the condiments are locked, the napkins are behind the thing. And then, like right now, I mean, do you know that tomorrow or day after there's going to be rain, and then there's going to be rain again probably in a couple of days? I mean, what do you do? I mean, this is 2012. I mean, this is the thing that is lacking in this country, and what we've gone, and I'm very disappointed that Starbucks is doing that. I mean, Starbucks stands for quality and service, one of the few companies. It's not McDonald's. And in fact, I love the drive-ups. My wife was briefly in Berkeley in 2006, and I used to drive up 3 times a month, I guess, or 2.5 times a month. And I loved it. That's when the drive-ups from Starbucks opened near Gilroy and then near Fresno. I knew which ones they were, and I would get and a dream came true. I mean, I never thought that Indian chai would be available on every block, and that's what Starbucks has done for so many of us. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's really wonderful, except for the price. So it does put you back a little bit. I mean, so if you have tea twice a day, it will be, it's kind of expensive. So I reward myself and have it on occasion. And especially on the long trips, I love the drive-through. But to not have a sit-down portion is completely abhorrent, disgusting, and I hope none of you will vote for that. I mean, that has to be changed. I mean, and that's one of the reasons, I mean, I'm disappointed that, it's very easy to say, well, our city has wonderful standards, and that's why, to explain the administrative hearing process, all cities have that. The disgusting thing is that our city has the administrative hearing at 3 p.m., which I cannot attend, and most people cannot attend, or if we attend it, it will cost us too much money because we have to take time off. I would, like today, I would have to take the whole afternoon off instead of being in Santa Monica to come to administrative hearing at 3 o'clock. And the fees to appeal it are something like, it's criminal. I mean, in my humble opinion, it's something like $1,200. I would like staff to let us know how much it costs. It used to be about $200 or $300 now, and that's why, I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, you know about the zero carbon imprint? I know Mr. Ferris knows about that.
Would you wrap up? Your time is over.
I really got involved. I apologize. I just asked you to make the change that I talked about. Thank you for letting me speak.
Mr. Kidwai, we're not debating the Starbucks tonight. We're just talking about allowing drive-through at the rear of buildings on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. So the Starbucks triggered this, but we are not approving that building tonight as far as the plan of it. And I travel all over California to Montana, and there are drive-through coffee places all over in every state without any seating. They're usually little tiny shacks. So, but we are not debating the Starbucks. We are not seeing the Starbucks project tonight. We're only looking at the Pacific Plan and changing it as a recommendation to the City Council to allow drive-through at the rear buildings that are on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. So
I'm glad for you clarified it, and I'm glad that it's multi-step process, but that's where the citizens really find it hard to stay up. That means another hearing, and that's why I'm telling you right now that you should tell the applicant that. And I just told you, I love this. I use the drive-throughs. I'm a road warrior. I've used drive-throughs and spilled things in the car, but I still use them because of the convenience and lack of time. It's not having the inside. You have to tell them that we will not accept, and this seems to be the new norm. That's why I said on Wilshire Boulevard, act of God, I experienced it firsthand. This is where they are going back, and it's basically so that they can make more money. That's what it is all about, at the expense of the consumer. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. No questions? Okay. We'll go back to staff. Do you have anything else to add?
The only thing I'd like to add is that if the proposed project, because there's a question about restrooms, they do have restrooms facing the patio area, so it's not something that doesn't have. The other thing is, overall, on the site itself, there's 3 existing driveways, and there's going to be only 1 on T.O. Boulevard, 2 on T.O. Boulevard, so it's going to eliminate another driveway opening on T.O. Boulevard. So just additional comments on overall of the site itself, but otherwise, staff have no further comments.
Thank you. Yes. Commissioner Ferris.
Thank you. So for an administrative hearing or a notice of a potential administrative hearing, what's the notification requirements?
It's still the same as the initial original process. Is notification to property owners within 500 feet and a small sign on the site, and we give them 2 weeks before the administrative hearing is scheduled.
Okay, so it's property owners who
Correct.
get the notification, not necessarily the businesses that are operating on site, correct?
No, if there are tenants on site, then we notify the tenants as well. Like if it's a shopping center, and there's a request within that shopping center, there's going to be 2 lists of notification that send out. One is the property owners within 500 feet, and all the tenants within that shopping center.
Okay, but I asked you about that, and you didn't mention the tenants before, so it is clear all tenants within 500 feet?
No, all the tenants within the subject parcel only. We can't go out there and get the tenants in other properties.
So the subject parcel, and let's use the corner of T.O. and Rancho as an example. The tenants who are currently on that property, which at this point are none.
Correct.
Right? And all property owners in 500-foot radius.
Correct.
And a small sign.
Yes.
If it goes to the Planning Commission, special use permit that goes to the Planning Commission, what are the notification
It's the same
requirements there?
procedures except it's public hearing.
And how big is the sign?
Doesn't change because we started with a small sign. That's what the code is. If you start with an administrative process, then it continues the same way throughout the process.
Okay. But if we were to change the land use table here such that it requires a special use permit at the Planning Commission,
That would be a large sign.
it would be a large sign. Okay. The reason I'm asking that is we have had cases that have come before us just in this past year, the concerns from the public about notification. And if only the property owners, especially in a business district, are notified of this potential change, it's possible the business owners that are not on the subject parcel may not know about it.
Well,
Because it's contingent on the property owners actually communicating with their
correct.
tenants.
That's what we think. We're hoping that's going to happen. Even with large signs, sometimes tenants don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the same.
like I said, the reason I bring it up is that it in fact does happen.
Yes.
In which, tenants don't get notification, people who are in HOAs don't get notification from their homeowners associations. And so
They do. Yeah, homeowners, it's part of the process. We send, within 1 mile radius, we send a notice for the administrative
to
process.
HOAs.
Correct.
But the
They don't
HOAs
notify.
sometimes do not
Correct.
communicate with their residents, even if they're 600 feet away from the property.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why I'm bringing it up. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go back to Mr. Scribner. You have 5 minutes rebuttal. And welcome back. Would you state your name and city of residence again?
Neil Scribner, 4765, Via Don Luis, Thousand Oaks, 91320. Just for information, the reason why this works well in Thousand Oaks, this drive-in facility, is that there are 12 other freestanding Starbucks stores. So if you want to sit down, you've got a lot of selection in Thousand Oaks. So just because, it's drive-in doesn't mean you have to come here. You can go to your store where you've been going, I assume, and continue. So that really doesn't affect that situation. And it's true, we actually have 2 bathrooms. We have one outside facing the patio, and we have one inside just for the staff. So we've, all of those facilities are there, and it's well planned, and it's impressive what Starbucks has done. So with that, unless you have questions.
Other questions? No? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Anything else from staff or questions of staff? Then I'll close the public hearing. And now is the time for deliberation or recommendation to the city council, or your pleasure. Mr. Ferris?
I'll start it off. I'm actually in favor of amending the specific plan to allow for these drive-through facilities. But I believe it would be the most prudent step is if we change the land use table to require these type of facilities on Thousand Oaks Boulevard to come to the Planning Commission for their special use permit. And then, as you might have heard on the questions I recently asked to Mr. Alawami, I'm much more concerned about the notification and making sure that the applications actually meet the public policy benefits that we all agreed upon or, deliberated through the specific plan approval process. While there is an administrative hearing, it would only trigger 1 letter to get to an administrative hearing. Still requires that enough people were notified to know that that was occurring and to be able to make a complaint. And the administrative hearing, I don't believe anyone would have to pay, but if it were to get to the Planning Commission, someone who opposed the approval would have to pay the appeal fee to get it here. And in some ways, the Planning Commission really is kind of a representation of the public. We're not members of staff paid salaries to judge whether they're meeting the city standards. We're representatives appointed by various council members who are closer to the public on judging whether it meets the standards and meets the public policy benefits. And I think for that reason, especially when we went through the process of the specific plan, and it was specifically noted that drive-through facilities on Thousand Oaks Boulevard should not be permitted, the next step would be 1 step removed from that, not 2 steps. And I think Planning Commission approval of a special use permit, I think, is the most prudent thing for us to do. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and I don't want to make a motion until I end up hearing it.
Commissioner Chappelle?
Yeah, I hear everything Commissioner Ferris is saying, and I too think that amending this specific plan in the nature that staff has put together is really the right thing to do. I mean, regardless of any plan that we ever have, you're always going to be tweaking it as we move on to meet the needs of the community. I think the biggest thing that was mentioned, what Mr. Ferris just said, was deliberating whether we have an SUP-PC or a SUP-A. And I kind of lean on the side of making things travel through the city much easier for business. And as long as we have the steps set up as to what staff can say, this meets the needs, I don't think it would be necessary to have to come back to the commission every time. Because again, remember what I said before, I think the reason we have not permitted it, I'm not making up words again, not to permit drive-throughs is because of the traditional way you would normally build a drive-through on the boulevard. Put the building right in the middle of it and circle everything around it. And according to what we wanted to do with the specific plan, the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan would be moving those buildings up to the sidewalk, and therefore you would not be able to have any drive-throughs because of the nature and the configuration of the building. And so therefore, that's why I think, that's what I would assume, and I think staff would agree with me, that's why when this was built, that's why they said, no drive-throughs. But this is a whole different concept. It's a whole different idea where staff and working with the applicant have come up with something that mitigates and still fits the specific plan, to where the traffic is behind the building, you can't see the building. I do have issues with it, but the issues I have don't come before us, and it's not on the agenda tonight. So and it would never be on the agenda because it has to do with traffic. But I see no problem. I'd like to see it go forward as staff has recommended it, just keeping it with the administration hearing, because we do have those things in place that if somebody does complain, it can hit the administrative hearing, and if they don't agree, then it comes up to the commission. So I think we have the dominoes there. So.
And I have to agree with Mr. Chappelle. I mean, I'd like to see the projects come back, but I think it just hinders projects in the city and making them pay an additional $1,130 to come before the Planning Commission, that I really think that it'd be better just to have it in the civic plan with not coming back to us. So, but if you'd like to make a motion, Commissioner Ferris, you're welcome to.
At least we'll go ahead.
Discuss the motion if you want.
Well, is it proper protocol to talk to other commissioners on the dais?
Yeah,
Because I wanted to ask, before you do that, I want to ask you a question, because
No, go ahead.
I really appreciate your comment on notification.
Yes.
And you're right, it goes out to the HOAs, and then they don't talk to anybody, and it just creates a hassle. Did you have any other solution or any other ideas or anything else that you've seen that we might address sometime in the future to change, or maybe Mr. Town has a better answer for that? Because I don't know any other way to do it as far as notification to the surrounding areas or the surrounding property owners.
And who pays for that notification, too? Yeah. Mr. Town, did you want to add?
Well, the notification, the major difference, as was discussed, would be between an SUP administrative level and an SUP PC level would be basically the sign size. The small sign is about 2 by 2. The large sign is 4 by 8 feet, so it's the larger one that you see at larger projects. That's the main difference. As far as notification goes, I mean, it's difficult, if not impossible, to ever ensure that all of the interested parties hear about it. We I think have a reasonable notification requirement. We do have a steady stream of administrative hearings, so people do comment. They do request that additional review. The fee, by the way, that was asked by Mr. Kidwai, the appeal fee from an administrative hearing to a planning commission level project is $1,130. So that's that fee. But I mean, I think that the notification that we have now is good, and the only difference really before us tonight in terms of that, or on that topic, is the size of the sign.
Thank you. Further discussion or a motion? Commissioner Ferris?
Let me go ahead and make a motion, and we'll talk about that and see where it goes from here. I will move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve Amendment Number 2 to the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Specific Plan SPA 2012-70074. Recommendation by the Community Development Department is based on the following findings. Include the findings, and only change from staff's recommendation would be that instead of allowing eating and drinking establishments with drive-through facilities with having frontage on Thousand Oaks Boulevard from being an SUP administratively, that it be an SUP at the Planning Commission level. That's, I believe, the only change. Is that an appropriate, based on the discussion, what you think is the right motion? Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
if I may, I think, again, for me, the reason is that I've seen this over the city just on the notification of these things. These small signs are kind of hard to see, and this is on Thousand Oaks Boulevard. We've talked about how even though we wanted a pedestrian-friendly thing, we still wanted a thoroughfare where there are going to be people moving by this sign. And I think the real key gets to be is that the businesses that are operating on the boulevard and nearby this may very well be affected by a plan to where drive-throughs are maybe adjusting some of the traffic patterns, but they might not necessarily get notified if the property owner doesn't notify them of the piece of mail that they get. I don't know who owns the properties. Hopefully most of them are local. It would be nice if all the businesses were actually operating their own property, but I don't think that that's always the case. It could be out-of-town business owners leasing it to a local business, and they may get the notification in the mail, but it may not get sent to them. And I just think that if we're going from a specific plan use that wasn't allowed at all, there wasn't any amount of money you could actually pay to end up getting this. But now the next level would be a planning commission fee so that the public can see whether it's actually working for the specific application. It has nothing to do with the Starbucks. It may be a fantastic, opportunity to develop that property consistent with that, but allow the public representatives, not merely just the administrative hearing, to determine that. This is, we're trying to implement a public policy here. I think this is the most prudent step to take. And I think moving too far to try and streamline something that previously, as we sit now, isn't approved, I think isn't necessarily the best step.
Commissioner Trappell?
Yeah, the only concern, or it's not even a concern, the only comment I would say is that, especially becoming a sales tax-based city, that I think it's extremely important that business has the ability to move through the process very quickly, or as quickly or as in as most expeditious time manner as possible. And we've got a proven track record with staff here, especially the way they address this particular change in the specific plan, to look out for the best interest in the city. I don't know how we could fix to ensure that everybody is going to be notified that should be notified. Half the time, those envelopes could sit in their mailbox, like I do with my electric bill. Leave it there for a couple of months. But So if we go to the SUPPC format, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that would mean if somebody didn't like the idea and had to appeal it, then they're paying that $1,130 to appeal the decision, as opposed to having the opportunity of going just to the administrative hearing first. And so I'm thinking that it would probably be better to leave it at the SUPA level, administrative, because if somebody did object, the notification, being in advertising, whether it's a 2x2 sign or 4x8 sign, you can't read that driving by. You have to stop at both of them. So I think it would be in the best interest of the community to have that opportunity to appeal anything without cost, at least the first time. So those are my thoughts. I can't say it. I can't support the motion. I mean, I don't want to block it. I want it to go forward to the council. I would prefer, though, that we... Well, I guess in this case, no. I'm not going to support the motion. I would rather have it be as an SUPA. I think that makes more sense, even though I do understand everything you said. And I thought the comments were well worth it.
and I haven't changed my mind. I'm not going to support the motion either. Should we vote on it? Do you want any final words, Mr. Farrer?
Let me mention
Commissioner
just it, understanding it's a 1-2 vote. 2 by 2 is 4 square feet. 4 by 8 is 32 square feet. That's a much bigger sign. People see that. And the mailing notification is the same, my understanding is, 500 feet to property owners. It's just that, again, we're moving from something that wasn't permitted at all to something that it may not get any public scrutiny because it could be in an administrative hearing. As long as nobody ends up knowing about it, no one will file a letter. I think at this point the most prudent step is to take one step away and make sure that there's a public hearing to make sure that whatever the application is meets with public scrutiny. So I'm disheartened that I did not get the support of the Commission on this, but I still think that's the most prudent step.
Any other comments? Then I'll ask you to vote, please.
Motion did not pass with Commissioner Ferris voting yes and Commissioner Reynolds and Turpel no.
Okay, so we need a motion now in the positive.
And I'll go ahead and,
Thank you, Commissioner Turpel.
and do that. That we recommend the City Council approve Amendment Number 2 to the Thousand Oaks Boulevard Specific Plan, SPA 2012-774, with the following recommendations by the Community Development Department based on the findings in our packet. And just with a comment is that all the items that Commissioner Ferris did bring up on this, I think were extremely valid, except I think it's really important to allow processes to move through without as much encumbrance as they possibly can, which is the only reason that I think staff was correct in turning this into a special use permit with what's that stand for? Administrative. So that's where I'm at right now.
Commissioner Ferris?
And if you don't mind, I think what I'm going to do is I would like to abstain from the vote. I don't want to end up voting against the motion. I'll allow it to go unanimously, but I would prefer to abstain and just ensure that my comments as to what I would like to see the council do with this are brought forward as well.
Okay, thank you. And with that, will you vote, please?
Motion passed 2-0 with Commissioner Ferris abstaining.
Thank you. And this is a recommendation to City Council, so there is no appeal period. So we'll continue on with the Community Development Department reports and referrals. Mr. Town?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to draw your attention to an upcoming hearing on your tentative schedule. That is for May 14th. We will not be meeting on April 23rd in 2 weeks. Your next scheduled meeting will be on May 14th to consider modifications to the sign program at the Jan's Marketplace. We do have other cases in the pipeline for June and July, but they're not yet reflected on the tentative hearing agenda. And then on page 28 of your packet, you have a couple of cases there which are going to be considered by the City Council. One is the Lakes parking standards, which will be considered by the Council tomorrow evening. And then, as you're already aware, the T-Mobile appeal is currently scheduled for Council consideration on April 24th. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. And approval of the minutes and resolutions of March 26, 2012. I have a card on this. Mr. Nick Kidwai, if you come forward, state your name and city residence, and you have 5 minutes.
Nick Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, Director Concerned Citizens of Thousand Oaks, Honorable Chair Darrell Reynolds, the other 2 planning commissioners and staff. Thank you for letting me speak. I just cannot believe that you run under rules, and most people don't know the rules, even in the chair. I really admire Commissioner Ferris as the author of giving us 5 minutes under public comments, but I believe on other subjects, just like the City Council, you are allowed 3 minutes and not 2 or 5. And those are big differences in my book because, and especially if you don't know what you're getting into and you prepare something, there are some citizens come and they're really nervous and they prepare and they would think, well, I get 5 minutes, and then they are given 2 minutes, and then they have to cut off paragraphs, stuff like that. It's not conducive to democratic process. I would like TOTV to show the minutes that I have highlighted. It's hard to read. But basically, a mistake was made in the last meeting in that I did submit a card for commendations to outgoing planning commissioners, and but when I was called, I thought I was speaking under public comments in general, and I did not submit a card for public comments in general, which I could have done afterwards. And you do have at least 2 forms of the record now. One is the video record on the internet and on CD, as well as the printed minutes. But the minutes that are printed trump the video because the video is only archived for 90 days. Maybe it might change to 1 year or 2 years, but nobody's going to keep, maybe it will change and you can put it on a hard drive, but then having access to it and all that. But minutes, I mean, the city has done a wonderful job. People think that I'm a critic, and I am a critic of the council. But the city, I mean, like I've said before, I enjoy reading the minutes from 1964 on. So the minutes should be corrected, is that I spoke for 2 minutes, and in fact, I thought that under that section you were allowing citizen comments to be put there. But I noticed Mr. Lund, the clerk, his name was there, basically. But the commissioners made the comments, and those were there. And so that's the second point that I would make, is that I would appreciate, I mean, people don't, and including myself, I don't want to be, I appreciate Mr. Trippel, he's a successful businessman, coming here, taking the time. But you should be doing things that uphold the oath of office that you've taken, uphold the flag that is missing. And it's just the basic thing is to have an agenda, to have time for posting, like Mr. Trippel said, is to have a process of following it. And on the minutes, and I've learned the ropes from this city. I mean, the minutes, you look in the minutes in the 90s up to 2004 or 5, there is a short summation of what the speaker said. And if you just, in fact, your minutes do say pro and con on the regional museum that is on the minutes, but it does not on the city council minutes. They don't even put the pro and con anymore. They just put the names. So this is a basic democratic building block, and for one thing, I mean, most of you people are eligible and become council people, stuff like that, and I would have a hard time supporting somebody that does not believe in basic democracy. Also, in the minutes, Mr. Ferris asked for a report on Measure E, and that's one of the problems that I and a lot of other citizens have, is that that questions are asked sometimes, not as much as I would like, but then they just go into the bottomless pit and there's no answer. And so I would like to know when staff will going to come back with that. And in fact, in public comments, I asked about certain things. In fact, if I might say, Madam Chairman, if you don't allow me, is that I've been saying for a long time, and I became emotional and did not say, is that you are changing these gas stations or service stations into CVS stores and credit unions, and what is the cumulative impact on the city's general plan? I mean, you owe it to the citizens to come up with a solution for that. And I know I'm out of order, so I appreciate your letting me speak. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Mr. Kidwai, I wanted to go over the minutes with you, and I'll tell you why. I called you forward because you had put down whatever it was, and I thought you were going to speak under commendations. But you didn't talk about that night. That's why you were interrupted, and we realized that your card should have been marked for the regular public comments that were going to be because of the agenda item we had that night. So that's probably why the clerk probably didn't put down that you spoke under the commendations public minutes, because that wasn't your topic at all. Mr. Town?
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Kidwai. When I looked at the statement cards, it was my understanding that, and perhaps I was mistaken, that you had intended to speak under public comments and not under the recognition. I'd be happy to review the video and add your name there under the commissioner comments, but that's why your name is shown under public comments and not under the outgoing commissioner comments, because I thought that your intention was to only speak under the latter, but you thought that you were being called to speak on that earlier in the agenda. So there was perhaps a mix-up in your intent on our part.
Commissioner Ferris?
Mr. Kidwai, my understanding in general, the minutes are generally a reflection of what actually happened at a meeting. So what happened was you spoke during the commendations and you spoke under public comments.
For 2 minutes.
Would it be appropriate to make sure that your name is under both of them as an accurate reflection? I think that's really
I think that's fine,
Yeah.
even though the card did have the first, yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree. So-
The minutes
Okay,
have
so
to be
we'll
a
make that
reflection of what
correction in the
actually
minutes.
happened. And I have no problem to say, if in fact you reprimand me for saying that he did not submit the card. I mean, I have no problem with that. Nobody reads these minutes. But I believe in the accuracy, and then I'm disappointed that I did send an email to almost all of you. The chair's emails are being bounced for some reason, but I did send it to Mr. Watkins and Mr. Town, both the marks, and that was not made available as a supplemental packet because on this thing. So I don't know where it went. Thank you very much for letting me speak, and I appreciate all the hard work that the commissioners do.
And I've already put your name in. I did that at the very beginning. So. Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as corrected. Commissioner Ferris?
Move to approve the minutes correcting, adding Mr. Kidwai's name under the
E.
commendation section. There's actually also one additional part under SPA 2012-70-70017, number 1 under page 3, specific plan amendment.
Oh, it
instead of
says the general,
specific
right,
plan
yeah.
amendment. That's just a misspelling, but since we're here to correct it, we may as well just go ahead and correct that one too. I think that's my motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, please vote.
Motion passed 3-0.
Thank you. And with that, are there any AB 1234 reports? None. Any commission comments? Commissioner Ferris?
One quick question Mr. Kidwai did bring up. On our planning commission minutes, when people come forward on cases, do we generally put pro and con on our minutes?
Mr. Town?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do. We put pro and con. We don't provide a detailed description of the comments, but we do that as well. And also in response to your request at the last meeting, we are working on the Measure E table accounting going through past staff reports to put that together. So that is in the works.
Okay, so that addresses Mr. Kidwai's concern about
Correct.
the report too. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting to May 14th, 2012. Good evening.